everyone. My name is Max. I'm 30 years old, so I'm kind of deep into biohacking, longevity stuff, and my main point of interest is everything related to a brain. I was always fascinated by like how our brain works, how we could affect it, how our brain affects us, and these feedback loops. So yeah, naturally, I went quite deeply this way a long time ago, and find out like a lot of interesting things. So to start us, it's probably my daily supplement stack, taken in the morning after breakfast, boron, nicotinamide acid, algae omega-3, B12, and caffeine. Obviously, I take like way more supplements, but they're like for the body. And I found that these supplements affect how my brain works. I'm kind of extremely sensitive to any discrepancies, both positive and negative, in my brain. So that's the most affected. This is the stuff that is most affecting my brain. In terms of probably the like positive to not positive negative, like the effects themselves. I'd say boron, nicotinamide acid, and caffeine, they're definitely more like a benefit from zero, let's just say that, uh, from some baseline, but you can't really like have a really downside if you're not taking them. While if you are not taking omega-3 and B12, if you have like not sufficient level in your blood, you would feel extremely bad. So my personal example, I was feeling bad for like 26 or 27 years of my life, so most of my life. And I wasn't even aware that what I was feeling is bad because, again, I wasn't aware that I'm feeling bad because that was my normal. And the thing is that I'm hypersensitive to omega-3 levels in my blood, and it affects me like insane, absolutely insane. Like literally, I'm becoming a zombie if my omega-3 levels are dropping below certain threshold. So I figured out like the exact dosage of omega-3 that I need, and I use in slightly like higher dosage because I feel better while doing that. And from my experience, a lot of people are also not aware of that, even though they're not hypersensitive. They could benefit from omega-3 in terms of like brain focus, brain specific, that sort of stuff. So if you're not ever done the specific blood biomarker test for omega-3 and omega-3 index, I highly recommend to do that and target not even slightly, probably like 30, 40% above the lower range, which is considered normal, and just see for yourself how you would feel. It's a quite low-hanging fruit because it's not some extremely expensive supplement. Even vegetologists that I take, that is sort of expensive, I think. It's not like that expensive. So it's like $50 a month, probably something like that, even less. So yeah, definitely, essentially everyone could afford it. And for me, it's life-changing. Like no other way to say it. It's life-changing. It's the best supplement that I take. And yeah, nowhere around to say that. Yeah. And on the evening, it's as part of my calm down procedure because sleep is the best drug we have and we use it every day. It's magnesium glycinate, rhodiola rosea, and two types of melatonins. So I'm using magnesium glycinate for roughly a year now, and it definitely improves my sleep. Same with rhodiola. And with melatonin, I'm a huge fan of melatonin, like same with omega-3, and I'm using that for like 6 years now, I think. Yeah, I think it's around 6 years. So I'm kind of expert in that. And why two melatonins? So what I found out is that melatonin increases the quality of your deep sleep and slightly decreases like volatility of your sleep, like the volatility of your jumps from REM to deep to light sleep. And because if you are taking, and due to the fact that most of the time I was taking just a liquid melatonin, it's quite shortly working. So in the middle of the night, your sleep quality start to decrease. So that's why I'm taking melatonin with delayed 6-hour release. So it would hit me after the main melatonin would dissolve. And I'm taking liquid melatonin 20, 30 minutes before bed to instantly go into best sleep possible and to nicely transfer from these effects from liquid melatonin to regular melatonin with 6-hour delayed release. So yeah, with daily supplement stacks, I'm taking again every day. That was about it. Oh yeah, interesting things about caffeine. So I do have some negatives from coffee specifically. I'm not that sure why, because for example, energy drinks does not affect me that much, but for some reason specifically coffee does. So I'm taking caffeine from matcha basically every day and around 70, 75 milligrams. And occasionally additional 70, 75 could come from the new Blueprint Super Shrooms drink I'm trying, or some regular tea, or it could be nothing. But yeah, basically I'm taking caffeine every day and I don't see any downsides from matcha, so to speak. And from coffee, from my perspective, again, I'm hypersensitive to any discrepancies. There are a lot of downsides. I'm definitely noticing like maybe 35% increase in anxiety, which is significant. So yeah, and discrepancies to sleep. No matter how early I would take my coffee, it disrupts my sleep, even though caffeine dosage could be the same as matcha. I'm not sure how that works, but that's my anecdotal experience and some experiences of the people that I asked to like look closely how they feel as well. So you might wanna just try it out. Like for example, if you're a regular coffee drinker, just change it to matcha with the same exact caffeine amount and just see for yourself how your sleep would be affected. Yeah, again, low hanging fruit, it doesn't cost you essentially anything and it could affect your life like quite a lot. So, going to regime optimization. So, sleep regime optimization. People are slowly starting to understand that sleep shouldn't be an afterthought. That's a good thing. Consistent sleep times, no phone before sleep, count down procedures, blackout windows, sound blockers, that's all basic stuff. But one key component still seems too radical to even talk about. Sleep quality is not equally distributed among chronological time, meaning that 8 hours of sleep from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. is different to 8 p.m. to 4 a.m., latter being way more beneficial. Uh, I think there's not much research done on this stuff, but my evidence and the fact that essentially it's our natural, and I don't like nature fallacy, but in this specific case, I do think it applies, that we do have like some predisposed best sleep possible, and it hugely tied up to a time. So I found it out actually in a very interesting situation. Like I would go to this later. So yeah, empirical evidence is quite strong from my side and from again all the people that I recommend. They tried it. Most of the time, people could not stick due social reasons to this regimen. But I'm trying to. Most of the time, I think like 90-95% of the time, I'm in the bed by 8 p.m. Give or take maybe 15 minutes. And sort of again, low hanging fruit in the sense that it's not some expensive thing to try and see for yourself. And what I found out is, for example, difference between 8 p.m. and 8:45 p.m. for me, it's tremendous. No other way to say it. And as I said, essentially, probably because I was like, I'm obsessed with how I feel. I'm hypersensitive to any change from the baseline. So yeah. Likewise, morning routine is important as well. As a rule, I don't open Insta, or any social before 12 p.m. and trying to start morning slowly. Though due to the nature of my trade, it's not that easy. So that's part I'm working on. And moving your last meal way early in the day vastly boosts your sleep effects. That was probably the biggest thing that I add to my sleep regimen in the last few years. Other than that, my sleep regimen was being like almost perfect for the past 6 years. That you should eat at least 4 hours before sleep, and I found out to be around 6-7 hours. You could definitely move away earlier. I think Brian Johnson eat like 11 a.m. or something like that. I tried that. I didn't like that much. So I usually try to have my last meal of the day around 1 p.m., 1 p.m., 2 p.m. So that's sort of range. Overall, if you start treating sleep like a mind-boosting drug it is and consider yourself a professional sleep addict, that might help you with transition against social norms. That's kind of funny experiment from different point of view. So if you would start treating sleep again like some sort of a drug and consider yourself an addict, and every addict is putting something above everything. And if you put sleep above everything, that could probably help you. Just a like funny mental model. Also, decision-making process. And while making focus of biohacking has increased in some of the brain capabilities from like physical point of view, you could also work it from the other side, more software one. I treat brain like some sort of a hardware device with implemented neural network and act accordingly, meaning that you can affect your decision-making process consciously, and that is like life-changing approach because you do not like a passive observer. You could interact with your brain, but it takes like literal energy, and our brain is not is not supposed to like it because we are still cavemen by our genetics. We evolve quite fast. We do not evolve quite fast, but we as civilization evolve quite fast. And it always trying to save energy, and getting your brain to burn energy to change is extremely hard. Like physically, it's hard for a brain. So our brain decision-making process, it's built upon genetics and psychological profile, essentially how you grew up and what your ancestors were doing. But worked well so fast that this is basically useless from my perspective. And if you use default settings, most likely you would be exploited in one way or another by people who figure this out and weaponize literally marketing is based on this. And by consciously changing your approach to decisions, even by more efficiently categorizing decisions from important to not that important, you could affect how your brain works going forward, and that could create a feedback loop, if that makes sense. Yeah, probably I would slightly stop there before going further, and probably if you guys have so many questions about the stuff that I read, I would gladly answer some of those questions.
Hey, yes, so I had a question about sleep. You have a very strict sleep regime, but I assume you didn't wake up one day and decide to change your whole sleeping schedule. And I assume you were like most people before, like eating late, going to sleep maybe after midnight, checking your phone when you wake up and everything. So how long did it make you to make these changes? And what were some of the first changes you introduced? Because what you say now, oh, I go to sleep at 8 p.m. and eat at 1 p.m., for me, it sounds like something I wouldn't be able to accomplish.
Yeah, actually, it's quite a big story, but I try to keep it short. It's also quite an interesting story. So I was at quite sort of a low point of life in 2018, and my at this moment friend introduced me to psychedelics, LSD to be specific, and it was a life-changing experience. No other way to say it. Essentially, it saved my life. The not that sort of expected. I wasn't obviously expecting anything. Part of it was that my emotions stopped being suppressed, and that affected my sleep a lot. So without me knowing anything about like sleep regimens, biohacking, etc., I wasn't aware that my sleep regimen is not working anymore, or maybe I just get a new level of understanding how my body works. So essentially, my sleep stopped working completely. So I was being able to someone turn off the mic. Yes, thank you. So my sleep turned off completely, stopped working, and I was being able to have like maybe 2 or 3 hours asleep a night, and I was feeling awful, obviously, for like months. I was trying to find what's wrong with me from the physical point of view. I did a lot of tests. I did the polysomnography, that sort of stuff, and physically I was good. I was fine, and it was psychological issue overall. And I managed to, with the help of one person, I managed to figure out that I could sort of bypass that by going to this specific sleep regimen. And I started getting to the bed way earlier than I was, half hour on a time. So like 1 week, half an hour earlier than I was going before, and then half an hour earlier. And I found out that I actually was started to regain the ability to sleep. That, and I was also taking 5-HTP and GABA at the time. And then after this like psychological issue, so to speak, I learned how to live with not suppressed emotions. It just becomes a habit of life, and I understand from the body perspective that it works. It simply works, and there is no way around it. You can't cheat it. You can't do anything to compensate for it. And so, yeah, essentially, you need to build your life around your sleep. And I suppose not everyone have that freedom, probably, but it's also like a double-edged sword. So, for example, if your work schedule is preventing you from going to like the best way possible and using the sleep as the best way possible, you will be also limited in the financial side as well, because your brain is not working to a full capacity, and you might be missing a lot of stuff that other way you wouldn't be missing. If that makes sense. So yeah, I hope that answers the question, and if not, yeah, should something else.
Yeah, it answers. And I just have one more quick question. You said that you started before taking 5-HTP. I'm
Yep.
taking it currently, but for example, I'm taking it in the morning, and I have a friend that is taking it in the evening. In the evening, I take 200 milligrams of magnesium. Do you think I
Mm-hmm.
should take 5-HTP in the morning or in the evening?
What's your dosage of 5-HTP?
Like I don't know, one pill. I would have to check how much is there.
Yeah, one pill could be like from 25 to 200, so it's kind of
I
it's
will
kind of
check.
hard to judge. Yeah, you need to check, but overall, 5-HTP is a serotonin related stuff, and if
Mhm.
you're on the anxious side and you don't have like sort of a baseline of a calm mind, so to speak,
It is
uh,
100 milligrams, by the way. I just checked.
sorry, what?
One tablet is 100 milligrams.
Yeah, 100 milligrams is it's quite a lot. So okay, I probably could give you an example of how it works for me, and you could like deduct your conclusion. So there are time of life when I'm extremely anxious, not that often, but still. And because my brain became so active and anxious, I can't like go to sleep. So I go to 5-HTP, and I'm using somewhere from 100 to 400 milligrams. My weight is, for the reference, 165 pounds or 74 kilos, give or take, in the metric units. But if I would take it, for example, in the regular evening, like for example right now, I would feel foggy and dizzy in the morning because I don't have like the excess amount of anxiety, and 5-HTP is just making me like way too calm and sleep. So you might want to experiment with that, and my probable advice would be to use it in the evening and like 2 or 3 hours before sleep, so you wouldn't feel like dizzy in the morning. And 100 milligram, again, from my perspective, if you are not like 300 pounds, it's like quite too big. But if you don't feel like dizzy in the morning after taking 100 in the evening, that's probably fine. Again, everyone is different. But yeah, taking it in the morning, I don't think that's a good idea.
Okay, okay, thanks. I will try. Let you guys know in the group chat.
Thank you for your questions. Anyone else?
Yes, regarding 5-HTP, I am curious about this because I heard about it in a probably Huberman podcast, and he was mentioning a potential risk. Are there potential risks with
Yes,
this
yes, you could
drug?
actually die. You could actually die from that if you're not that. So if you're taking the antidepressants and how it's called in English, SSRIs, I think. Yes, SSRIs. And if you take sufficient dosage of SSRIs with spicy HTP, you could have a serotonin syndrome and literally die.
Okay, but for people who are not on SSRIs, is there a risk in terms?
I don't think.
Mhm.
Again, it depends on the dosage. Obviously, you could probably die even from water. Yes. But if you are taking like low dosages, for example, I would not recommend anyone taking more than like say 200. You wouldn't have any more bad effects than being dizzy. But I would strongly recommend to go in with increments of like 25 to 50 milligrams. So do not start with 100 milligrams. Again, just see how you feel. And I'm a contrarian on this because usually people throw 5-HTP in like in everything, and I don't think that's the best idea because it makes you like calmer, more relaxed, more dizzy, more sleepy, and it's not what people are usually think like sort of. So you need to understand what your goals is. You can't take 5-HTP, I know, like a soda, you know.
Yeah.
It's actually working supplement. You can't just take it without any purpose. So I do have, for example, bottle of PyHTP, but it's like for special occasions when again it happens very rare these days. But I can't physically take it every day. Like I would feel dizzy.
Right. So you do it in, like, if you have a stressful week, you do it that week and you see results.
Specific day. So I'm
Okay.
very much in tune with my brain. And I do know there is a certain threshold, even without like trying to sleep. So if I'm feeling extremely anxious, so it was I break up with my long time girlfriend, like maybe 1.5 years ago, and it happened like in an absolutely awful way. And I was anxious for a few days, so I was using 5-HTP to get me to sleep because I was overthinking constantly. So, for example, such a condition or some work related stuff. But again, it's quite a rare occasion. Probably it happens once a 6 months or maybe 7 months, something like that. So currently I'm not using it any like overall.
Okay. And about your sleep window, you said you aim to go to bed around 8 p.m. until 6 a.m.
Uh, until 4 a.m. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, usually I'm in bed from 7:50 to 8:15, something like that. Like
Yeah.
probably 95% of the time. Until some like extraordinary stuff will arrive. And yeah,
Okay. I aim to move to 22, to move my bedtime earlier to 22, and I struggle to do that.
uh,
How did you get to 20 to 8 p.m. as a?
I'm just addicted to feeling good, and I hate feeling bad, essentially.
Yeah, yeah. No, I share that as well. But the part of laying in bed at 22, because I can be in bed at 22 and still not, not fall asleep until midnight.
Oh, you mean like that? So yeah, you need to train your body. That's the first thing. So you need to for your body and your brain to understand that you will go to sleep at the specific moment of time and move it slowly. From my experience, you can't just move by like 2 hours at the moment. So like go 15 minutes to 30 minutes. And actually, in that specific case, if you actually want to do that fast, 5-HTP and GABA and melatonin could help you. So you just threw your whole, like the whole sleep stack that I'm proposing at yourself and force yourself to sleep. And that way you might be like speed run the whole, the whole stuff, the whole thing.
I
So for
might try
example,
that. Yeah.
yeah, you might try like taking around like 6-7 milligrams of liquid melatonin, like 50 milligram of 5-HTP and 750 to 1000 GABA. And I very much doubt that you would not be able to fall asleep.
Hmm. Thank you.
And yeah, and obviously, once you will reach your desired time, you decrease your dosage like to a normal and then yield the benefits. Essentially, that's how I done it.
And are you able to fall asleep without taking anything?
I did not try that for a long time.
Okay.
So I am on the melatonin every day. I don't see any downsides of it. It definitely improves my quality of sleep. And I researched it, and I do not find any evidence at all. I do think, yeah, I am able. I think, yeah, it was a few times this year, past year, sorry, that I was sleeping without anything. But it's just better with melatonin. So yeah,
Thank you.
Huberman
Thanks.
says melatonin. Yeah, it's a bad
I,
idea if
I
taken.
I had a question. So,
Okay.
firstly, about 5-HTP, I have been trying and like experimenting with 5-HTP for about like half a decade now. Primarily, I didn't like, I wanted to use it as like whenever you have like the downer from MDMA. So the next day, I would like load up on 5-HTP so that my serotonin is balanced out. And so far, I would say like 200 mgs, I didn't really get much effects. But let's say if I had like a decent dose of like MD, like somewhat like normal adult dose or a little bit less than that, then 400 mgs of 5-HTP would somehow like neutralize. Like, I wouldn't really feel bad the next day. But when I try to take it for, let's say, like I'm restless a little bit in a day and I would want to like be a little bit more calmer and focused, I had no effects. I pushed it until I think one day I ended up taking 3 pills. So that's like 600 milligrams of 5-HTP, no effect. I tried combining 5-HTP with melatonin for sleep, no effect. So at one point I thought, are these like just snake oils or like, I don't know. But then the fact that it actually works after like when my serotonin levels are depleted after MDMA trip, and then when I take the 5-HTP, it works. That means there's some sort of like a chemical pathway that is being activated at that time. But when I'm normally taking it, it's not doing anything. Does that mean my serotonin levels are already saturated? Is that it? Could that be a probability?
You could probably, so that's probably the important disclaimer that it's only one part of it. So like in your specific case, unusual days, you might have a problem from the different direction and you need to find it out. And regarding what you're saying about MDMA, yes, obviously, also small life hack. If you would take 5-HTP once you after the come down before sleep, it would make it even better.
Cool. So
But
I had
yeah,
another question, but this is more like I would say technical. Let's say when it comes to breaking the default mode network, apart from
Mhm.
like, of course, like heavy doses of psychedelics force you out of that naturally. And then you're like, it's like a hard reset. And based on your set and setting or your like, environment, mindset, and how much you can control the trip, you can restructure or formulate like new pathways in the brain. But aside from, let's say if you're like not using psychedelics to break your default mode network, what are the other things that you've experienced that we can utilize to break free from the default mode network?
I do think I do have the answer to this question. I will try to formulate it. So for me, is one of the most important things that you can do for your brain. Yeah, probably the most important thing for your brain. And I don't really know if I did have that like natively from the moment I was born, because I can't quite remember, or that was a result of like some point of life. You should be able to question everything in terms of like the nature of existing, everything literally, and do not take anything at face value. And like this one concept, it changes everything, because if you are able to question everything and able to see how like the opposite views of anything could be right, essentially that keeps your mind in a constant state of wonder, because your mind is wondering: is it wrong? Is it right? What are the arguments for it being right? What are the arguments for it being wrong? And you're essentially at every time are open to any possibility. And for that, a lot of people do not like to think of themselves that they're biased to some sort of stuff. But again, evidence point out that we are all biased, and that mental model helps me a lot. So I could question everything, and I'm trying to like being open again to everything, and that exact possibility is what allows you to break this barrier essentially, because it is the barrier itself. When you're hell bent on anything, again, anything could be anything on life, you have some like predispositions, and you're not even aware of when and how by whom they were built. But there was like specific people, as I mentioned in my slide, that put these ideas or the worldview in your head. And what you might consider your thoughts, because like it's your brain, it's your thoughts, right? They're not really yours. They're a product of the culture that you were born in, grew up in, and the content that you consumed, and the social circle around you. And really contrarian opinions, they almost like, not almost, but a lot of the time they're considered radical exactly because of this, because some people have insensitive for these opinions to be radical, if that makes sense.
I mean, if we see it that way, like every single, of course, on a base level, like of course, there's that I call it like rules, like bullshit rules of like society or culture, scape, family, friend circle. So like, basically, the norms that we operate in, and most of it is actually imagined concepts. It's not even real stuff. It's not backed by data. It's some medieval person's idea or some random thing that that's just
Yes.
normal. But that is on a, like, let's say, on a very surface level. It's quite easy for people like us who have some degree of like who actually believe in critical thinking to identify, because I think we both of us are aligned in this ideology that the fundamental ethos that we believe in is you have to be critical about everything, and like not cynical but skeptical, unless or until it's proven with data. And I guess that's why we are biohackers, right? And even data, as we are more like, as we get more precise data, more amounts of data, the deductions might change. But this aside, let's say if, the hypothesis that okay, we should always be critical about something, and what we think is our own opinion is somewhat not really our own opinion. That actually can be pushed into a different level, right? Like if we see it like that, all the knowledge and information that we synthesize throughout our life has been picked up from either somebody's opinion or some sort of an observation. And it's more or less like permutations and combinations of whatever access points that we open ourselves up to. So at the end of the day, it's like it becomes like the chicken or egg kind of a question. Is there anything uh, fundamentally is there anything that can be called as an original idea, or is it just like a synthesis of multiple other ideas? And like it's just permutations and combinations of everything that has been there before. It's just in a different pattern.
That's an interesting perspective, but we should probably like divide. The original idea could mean that either, what do you mean by original idea? So that no one before you had this idea, or that you had the idea that you come by yourself, and then you found out that other people already had this idea. Would that be original in this way?
More or less, it's like, let's say, for example, let's say I choose to be for example, let's say supplements. Okay, I want to believe that L-theanine helps me calm down. Like I believe in that based on my experience. Okay, how do I do it? Like I tested it out. But it could also be the fact that, let's say, five of my friends have been trying out L-theanine and their feedback was good. I read up five papers on it, out of which four said good things about it. Maybe one said something else. And my brain is already subconsciously primed to have a certain kind of acceptance
Well, it's a
towards.
placebo effect. Yeah.
Yeah, even if it's not fully placebo effect, let's say it does work, but already due to the priming, let's say I'm approaching it like that. Or if I'm too critical of a person, then maybe even if it's working mildly, I am not really feeling the effects, because at the end of the day, your brain can bypass like minor modulus like this. I have seen people who are like tripping on 800 UGs of acid. They're like fully in control. I've seen people who are like, losing their shit in like 80 UGs. So it's a lot, like at the end of the day, your brain is way more powerful than all of that, right? So what I'm trying to
Yep.
say is, although we can approach things with a degree of critical thinking and but you said that like we can keep on questioning things, but fundamentally to break the default mode network, is that enough? That's what I'm trying to say. Because at the end of the day, some sort of lens is there. All of us, no matter how critical we are, even if we are very self-aware, there's some sort of lens that we have regarding every single thing. And like you said, we don't really know where we pick that up from. So even if when we think we are being critical about something, due to the nature of how we have evolved as human beings, which is like 80, 90,000 years of our brain, uh, we just, it's highly likely that we end up, falling back into the default mode network. So without any kind of like external stimulus, is it really even possible to break that?
Without external stimulus, I don't think so, because as I told before, that the the very process of thinking about something from perspective of not how it was put it in your brain, but for example, like just take something about the world, like the very foundational things that you never thought about it. Like, for example, how specific part of the world works, like politics, for example, or like, okay, bad example, like any other like part, and just try to forget everything you know and form your own opinion from the get-go, like from the zero. And for example, for me, I was sort of forced by the nature of what I'm doing to do that every time. And I do think it's affected how you use the world, because you're changing your opinion that much that often on some things that it becomes like a habit. So you're not hell bent on anything. You could question everything, and it becomes your default mode. No matter how radical the opinion could be, no matter everything, because you simply do not care. See what I'm saying? You need to like it's a skill. You need to train it. It's not something you either have or haven't. It's a skill. Even there's a specific term, and I think, yeah, it's called like professional idiocy or something like that. So if person could be extremely sufficient in his area of a job, for example, but he's complete idiot outside of it, and he's not even aware that he could be the idiot because he's not even like allowing this very possibility.
Yeah, we see that all the time, like a lot of smart scientists, but then in terms of like their spiritual perspective, they're very dogmatic, they're believing in something that is clearly proven scientifically wrong. And you see that everywhere. Like you go to Intel, you go to NASA, you see that. So I totally get what you're saying. So in summary, let's say what you're saying is in a way that the brain is naturally comfortable holding on to things and like making patterns out of things and being in that comfort zone and forming that identity of like, oh, this is how it is, and then sticking to that opinion for the feeling of like familiarity. But the fundamental shift is a permanent shift into a place where everything is by default very more like, what is that, like a dough, like like a child's brain always being like very open to reformation, any sort of reformation.
And you need to understand why. I do think that really helps. For example, I'm very wandering person, and I do need to know why. And you need to understand that your brain is working like this, not just because it's a decision-making mechanism that allowed our ancestors to survive by our brain evolving to specific like state to solve to save the energy, because calories were not in abundance most of the times that humanity was alive, and our brain like could not always work 100% of its capabilities because it burns tremendous amount of energy. Again, an anecdotal experience. Maybe some of you noticed that after LSD, you are way more hungry, but you're not gaining any weight. That's my regular experience because your brain is working that much more and it's burning way more energy. And it's sort of not natural, and it's not good for survival in the past medieval times. But right now we can have this sort of luxury from the nature perspective, but it's not happening by itself. We need to activate it like manually, literally, we need to manually activate it. And that's a skill as well. So you need to learn how to activate it.
If anyone else doesn't have a question, I actually had a question. And this is more towards like motorsports. Like, how do you optimize your brain and body to like to build that degree of focus, alertness, measurement? I mean, you always have to be in hyper vigilant state, right, whenever you're on the track.
Yeah. So actually, I call it forced focus. So I think why I do have such a pleasure doing that. Yeah, just for the context for everyone else. So I'm huge into motorsports, like on amateur levels, and it was sort of a stale due to my injury in the previous 2 years. So I'm doing like car racing and slightly dipping my toes into motorcycle track days. So essentially, because what are you doing is that much like harder and not natural than your normal living, you have this forced focus state of brain. You're just at the moment. You're not like possibly thinking of anything else, because if you are thinking of anything else, you're not going fast enough. That's as simple as that. So essentially, you're not like targeting it; it activates by itself. But your capability of sustaining this focus, yes, you need to have like the brain in the best conditions possible and the body as well. It's a huge penalty if you're in any condition like worse than being absolutely fit. So I'm very lean. I'm 9% body fat, and essentially just all muscles. And it does not. I do not have this toll on the body, because when you are, for example, in a car, G-force is constantly pushing you, and it wears you out, and you need to be as light as possible. For example, the Formula One drivers, they're all short and extremely lean, like they're 155 pounds or something like that. And motorcycle riders as well. I mean, like proper sportsmen, because any toll, like it's sort of like a leverage. So in your normal life, you do not really notice it, but as soon as you start applying force, it becomes a leverage, and each and every kilograms that you have like additional that you not needed, it vastly affects your brain as well. Because again, like G-force is there pulling your whole body and your brain, and if you weigh, for example, 20 kilograms more than you should, it wears you out like way faster than it should. So yeah, that's how like brain and body connection should not be underestimated, and essentially it's very noticeable in peak conditions when you are doing like peak of your brain. Again, I can't really count how much calories does this burning, but I do know that you are burning a lot of calories when you are doing that stuff.
So do you normally stay in like a surplus state whenever you're playing sports actively, like motorsports actively?
I do not really count my calories, but I'm probably eating more. Let's just say that, because again, you're burning so much calories. I remember participating in an endurance race. I was driving for 1 hour straight, so one stint it's called. And in 1 hour, I lost maybe like 3 or 4 kilograms, and I was already lean, so that's like a lot. Most of it was water, but
Motor.
still, yeah, you're losing that much energy and that much weight. I was almost like dying.
It was like 3-4 kilograms of water lost in how long? The time duration?
1 hour.
1 hour.
Yeah. So you're like, yeah, I was absolutely devastated. It's the hardest things that I've ever done in my life. I wasn't physically prepared at the moment at all. And like I have the photo and videos. I was looking like I'm about to die when I exited the car after my stint. Like literally like walking corpse.
Well, you didn't die, so that means you grew out. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So
Yeah, but it's still sort of a fun because you're pushing that much. It's not pushing like in a gym. Gym like super safe environment. Like worst case scenario, you know, you like break an arm or something. That's not nothing. There, like one mistake and you could literally die. So yeah, it's like it's constantly in your mind. You can't unfocus. You can't go easy. That's the thing. So
it's like
yeah,
forced, like for every single event, like I would say, if you even for every nanosecond, you have to like forcing focus.
yep,
Even if you feel
yep.
tired, if you feel like you're gonna die, it's just basically mind over matter. That's it.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
And it's tremendous efforts. And again, I just slightly started dipping my toes into that, and I'm planning to, once I figure out my injury, I'm almost there. I'm planning to restart like proper racing in US already. So yeah.
Awesome. What are some hacks to help that forced focus, like to make that journey of forced focus easier? What are some hacks? Like, is there some supplement that you can take, or some drugs, some medication, chemical? I don't know.
Yeah. So
Guys.
one of my, I could probably like reverse it. I tried to probably reverse engineer it. You could probably call it that. So essentially, you need to create the sense that you need to be in that state. Otherwise, you could like die or something. Like it's the goal. And one of that thing, like what works for me, I wouldn't vouch that it work for everyone. So from time to time, I mix, let's say, caffeine with small dosage of LSD, like microdosing, or Adderall with LSD. Again, very small dosages. I'm hypersensitive, so for Adderall, it's like 10 milligrams, if it's in milligrams, like the smallest dosage, I think. And with LSD, it's like 10 UG or maybe 15 tops. And that's in that state, it's way easier to like tell your brain what is that necessary that you need to be in that state and start like thinking in that speed and in that focus as you're actually, for example, racing. And it's very intense experience, not in terms of like psychedelic experience, obviously, because there is not much of psychedelic experience on that dosage of LSD, but on the intensity of it, because you can control this level of intensity way easier, and that could benefit. Again, it's not definitely not for everyone, but I think it's a skill that could be learned, so to speak.
So it's like the correct me if I'm wrong, if I get it, like the LSD microdose helps you with some degree of neuroplasticity or like fluidity. So it helps you
Yeah,
open up the things up, and then the Adderall helps you like after you have softened it up, like to focus it into like exactly the pinpoint that you want to throw it in.
yeah, and you're
This is
the good thing that it's way easier to get like to break this sort of a barrier of a normal thing that you are doing, because if you are being honest, most of the things that we are usually doing, if you are not like focused, they're bullshit. They do not affect our life.
Mm.
And we do have like the big important like decisions and everything that actually affect our life a lot, like the place where you're living, the things that you're doing for a job, the families that you're starting, like your partner, that things that affects. I think Naval can't call it big three, and that's actually affect your life. And most of other things that we tend, like statistically speaking, we tend to worry way more than we should. And that's actually how I literally chose what I would be doing like for a job, like from this perspective. I wasn't aware that this is like a conscious process of the time. I just chose it because like felt all of this like not parameters, yeah, probably like parameters that it would really like have a high chance of leading me to a life that I want with the parameters that I have. And like there is not much worrying about most of other stuff. Like for example, if you're focusing like as a man on a career, you shouldn't really focus on most of other stuff. I mean, like worrying not about like hobby. I mean, like I'm talking about like regular day-to-day stuff, because most of the time money would cover it. So you could just focus on making money. Like that simple example. Everyone is saying that, but barely anyone is actually doing that, like a sleep regimen, you know?
pretty cool stuff. I also wanted to know about the thing that you're building. I remember that you told me that you're building a device which can
Yeah,
real time.
I'm not building, I'm just trying to find a way like to build it. One sec. So there is a plethora of devices that allow you to read your brain alpha waves, I think. And from this plethora of devices, unfortunately, most of them have closed API. And this device, see? This does not have a closed API. Quite the opposite. They have a community of developers, and they actually already made quite a few things. Not exactly what I want to do, but already there were like quite a few fun experiments with that. I think few years ago, the guys is so it's a Russia startup. They have a product sold in America. We are an American distributor, but it's like quite small startup still. So they figure out and tuned how it's called, like electric scooter, like the small like rental scooters, how to control it via your brain with this device. So just a small device, API, few software developers worked on it, and they taught their brain how to control the electric scooter movement, like completely with this device. So throttle, acceleration, stopping, that sort of stuff. And that was like just a small example of small things that you can do. So what I was actually wanted to do is, unfortunately, because some people works on this full time, actually, I recently found out that students from San Francisco started doing exactly what I wanted to do. So they're using alpha waves from a brain from some sort of a similar device with an open API and raw output that you could read to and supplement, like not supplementing, like adding the LLMs, current model, large language model, to read your thoughts. And they found out that you do not need some extremely high grade devices, like regular good device that is reading alpha waves of the brain is enough. So that was like my main idea to read your like thoughts at least. And the second thing is they already have the apps for this. So apps for training your brain, essentially because you can like by default, you can't really know how your brain, like what your brain is experiencing right now. But like with any data point, if you actually have actual data point and you could see at any given moment of time what's happening with your brain, like in what state it is, like what's the raw data output, you can sync your conscious with that, understand your brain, and train it like a large language model.
Yeah,
So
that would
again,
be quite awesome. Like, how you have like CGM, when you have a CGM, like what food your body reacts to in what way, and you
yes,
track
exactly.
insulin, you actually alter your diet. But for brain, having something like that would be so cool. Like then you know what supplements are actually working, even if it's just like, okay, what waveform is your brain emitting right now? Is it alpha, beta, gamma? What state is it in? So you actually
Yep.
know like what trigger is working in what way. But is there any commercially available device for that? Like if we want to
Yeah,
wear the
yeah, yeah,
24/7
yeah.
in
You
my
could
head.
you could already buy the device that I own, for example. Again, no affiliation. I don't know these guys. I just bought this device because I searched the market, and
What?
that's the like best device in terms of quality, and the fact that you can access the raw output, and they have an open API. So that's like a huge, like that's no brainer because most of the devices they do not have this feature. So you are bound to use the app and trust their algorithms. That's the problem. You can't build your own algorithm.
Is it the same one as Gias mentioned, Mendy.io?
No, so the startup is called Neri. I will put it in the chat.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah,
Neri.
and I think in American markets they would have like different name, but you would find on the official website the American version. So I bought the like obviously American version, but I know them by the name Neri from the moment that I was living in Russia from the past time.
So the purpose of the device would be to read the state of your brain in
Yeah.
terms of wavelength?
Yeah, so they
Okay.
have default apps that help you train your brain already. So you could train your brain, you could understand what type of brain. I think they have like 4 personalities, sort of statistically measured. And this device would tell you what like side are you leaning on, and also will help you train your brain because they have again pre-installed apps to do that. Obviously, you would need like some tight contact with your skin, so it's not super comfortable. You couldn't wear it all day. But again, it's not some super expensive device. It's like $700 or something. And if you're into this stuff, it's definitely worth trying.
Cool. Gia, how was your experience with Mendy?
I've used it for maybe max a few months. And I mean, I can say if I saw improvements, but maybe this is the type of thing that you'd need to do consistently over a longer period of time in order to see improvements. Also, I think they're quite new. There haven't been enough, many studies done on how they work and why they work and how long you need to actually use it in order to see effects. But I liked it. I enjoyed the experience. I found it relaxing. I was doing it for 15 minutes before bed, and I found it relaxing. Although the idea was to improve your focus, so you had to do a small game of like to follow something, an obstacle on the screen. It was like a small game, but it was engaging, but in a relaxing way.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Neri sounded different from your description. Neri sounded like a different type of device, and I'm particularly interested in seeing what type of personalities you are mentioning, and to see the model that they based it on.
I do think you can find quite a lot of information on YouTube from them. And either you could use English subtitles, or maybe there are actual videos on English. I'm not sure. But yeah, the information should be easily accessible. And actually, I think they did, again, in Russia, they did a few tests, and this device was like superior to popular devices, other popular devices. Obviously, they could be biased this way, but it was an independent lab, I think, so no conflict of interest. And as I mentioned, like the biggest thing is you have the access to raw outputs, you have the open API, and you don't have any subscription bullshit. So like from cost perspective, I don't know what could compete with that.
So that means you can make your own soft tech and then connect the device with that.
You can make anything. Again, you can make like the mind reading device from that, because again, you have all the raw outputs. You could create the app that you would control the VR glass and like without even using your hands, for example. It's all possible. It's all open. That's the thing. And most of the manufacturers would not allow you to do that because they do not have the open API, and you are bound to use their apps, and that's it. That's all.
For Neri, can you opt out? Like, let's say you just want to use the sensors for the device. You don't want your data to be collected by any third-party organizations, including the device makers. Is that possible to like work around that?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I can answer this question.